You've made all these sampler blocks. Now what? It's time to think about your setting, which refers to the way you'll showcase these blocks in your quilt. In this video, you'll learn about some of the popular settings and the steps that quilters go through when choosing their final layout. Then you'll get directions for setting your block with sashing, and then for squaring up your quilt. If you're interested in a different layout, the last videos in the Saturday Sampler series will go over other settings and finishing options. There are many different quilt settings. Here are some of the more common ones. A straight set is when blocks are adjacent to each other. When you add strips of fabric between rows of blocks, you're setting in rows. Add a square between the blocks and you have an alternate set. Turn your blocks at an angle and you've set your blocks on point. You could add a strip of fabric between each row for a different look. The strips of fabric between the blocks are called sashings. Find a spot to lay out your blocks. Getting them up on a wall works best, but arranging them on a table or a floor is okay. Try to find balance in your quilt. This arrangement's out of balance as all the big dotted fabrics are clumped together. Notice the reds blend together in the lower right-hand corner. You might find a block that doesn't play well with the others, like the green in the block at the top. Don't be afraid to remove blocks you don't like. Try turning your blocks on point. Some of the blocks look good like this, but others, like the hearts, look out of place. You could get rid of these blocks and use alternate squares to fill in those spaces. Take your blocks to the fabric store to interview different backgrounds, or use fabrics from your stash. These fabrics can add brightness or darkness to your quilt. Is the yellow too bright? Then try something a little darker with texture. Too much dark blue, but you really like the color? Then why not try sashing? Once you decide on the setting and background, start arranging your blocks again. Use a camera to take photos of the different layouts and then decide on your favorite. You don't have to use all your blocks. Remember, this is your quilt and you get to decide what looks best. Ready to start cutting and sewing? You can download these free patterns at learnhowtoquilt.com. Click on the Quilt Classes tab and then scroll down to Sampler Quilt. Press your fabric and then fold from selvage to selvage and then fold again. Trim to get a nice straight edge, then cut 7 2-inch strips. Following the cutting guidelines, I stacked 2 strips and then cut 6.5-inch rectangles. Then I stacked 3 strips and cut 2 sets of 6.5-inch rectangles. Now you'll have 8 2-inch by 6.5-inch rectangles that will fit between your blocks. These extra strips will be used for the rest of the sashing. Lay out your blocks with the sashing strips. Put right sides together and sew 1/4-inch seams. Be careful not to sew over the triangle tips. Press towards the sashing. Lay out your blocks. Finish sewing each row and press. Often, some of my rows end up being a little longer or shorter than the others. I've placed the longest row next to the shortest. If this happens in your quilt, you'll need to find the average of the longest and shortest length and then cut 3 sashing strips this size. You'll use the sashing strips to get your quilt straight by easing in or out each section. Put right sides together and ease each strip in place. Use pins to hold everything. When all the rows have been sewn and pressed, you're ready to add the outside borders. It's very important at this time to keep your quilt squared. You'll use the center measurements to cut the outside border strips. Line up 2 strips at the top center and mark your cutting line at the bottom center. Ease these strips to the sides and pin. After sewing and pressing, measure through the center and cut the border strips. Put right sides together and ease each strip in place. Sew and press. I'm not adding any more borders, but if I was, I'd continue measuring through the center till my quilt's completed. In the next video, you'll learn about using alternate blocks for your setting. You'll also get some info about making the quilt sandwich and finishing the edges. Thanks for visiting learnhowtoquilt.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and share our videos with your friends.